This 7-year-old girl was married off to seal peace between two warring dynasties, and 12 years later, she would watch one of them burn to the ground. Her name was Senhime. By blood, she was Tokugawa. By marriage, she was Toyotomi. Through her mother, she carried Oda and Azai blood as well. 4 of the most powerful warrior houses in Japanese history ran through her veins. She was born on the 26th of May, 1597. Her grandfather was Tokugawa Ieyasu, founder of the shogunate. Her maternal grandfather was Azai Nagamasa. Her great-uncle was Oda Nobunaga himself. Yet the most shocking part of her life was not who she was born to. It was where her family would send her. What she saw inside Osaka Castle in the spring of 1615 would haunt her until the day she died, as a Buddhist nun half a century later. And the choice she made in that burning castle, only revealed in the final minutes of this video, is the real reason her name still survives. In 1598, the great unifier Toyotomi Hideyori died, leaving behind a 5-year-old heir, Hideyori. 2 years later, Tokugawa Ieyasu won the Battle of Sekigahara and seized real power. In 1603, he became shogun, but one problem refused to go away. The Toyotomi heir was still alive, still rich, and still living inside the mightiest fortress in Japan, Osaka Castle. Ieyasu's solution was his own granddaughter. When Senhime was 6 or 7, he decided she would marry Hideyori. In 1603, the wedding took place. She was 7 years old, he was 11. This was no private affair. It was a diplomatic bridge. A Tokugawa princess sent into the heart of the Toyotomi camp to soften 12 years of rivalry. Senhime moved into Osaka Castle with Hideyori and his powerful mother, Lady Yodo. Records describe their marriage as a good one. They lived together for over a decade, but they had no children. As the years passed, the political bridge began to crack. The trigger, when it came, would arrive in the form of a single inscription on a bronze temple bell. By 1614, Ieyasu had ruled for more than a decade, but Toyotomi Hideyori was no longer a child. He was 21 years old, and the Toyotomi house was sponsoring the rebuilding of a great temple in Kyoto called Hokoji. When the temple's massive bronze bell was cast, an inscription was placed on it, praising Toyotomi power. Tokugawa officials examined the inscription and accused the Toyotomi side of hiding a coded insult against Ieyasu, splitting the characters of his name in a way that, they said, was a deliberate curse. Some historians believe the offence was real. Others argue the Tokugawa side was looking for any excuse to act. What is certain is that the bell gave Ieyasu what he needed, a reason. In November of 1614, he marched on Osaka. The siege began on the 4th of December. Inside the walls were Hideyori, Lady Yodo, and Senhime. 17 years old, the shogun's own granddaughter, now trapped inside the enemy stronghold her own family was preparing to destroy. The defenders were not weak. A samurai general named Sanada Yukimura built an earthwork called the Sanada Maru and held it with 7,000 men. But the Tokugawa side brought something the Toyotomi did not have: heavy artillery, and what was coming would dismantle Osaka from the inside out. The winter siege did not look like a clean assault. Osaka Castle was vast, surrounded by deep moats, and defended by tens of thousands of seasoned warriors. Direct attack was not going to break it. So the Tokugawa forces used something newer. They lined up imported European cannons alongside their domestic guns. On the 8th of January, 1615, a limited bombardment began. The shells did not collapse the walls. They shook the nerves of the people inside. Cannonballs are said to have landed near the chambers of Lady Yodo herself. In the middle of this terror sat Senhime, granddaughter of the man giving the orders to fire. Then came the negotiations. Diplomats from both sides met to talk peace. On the Tokugawa side were Honda Masazumi and Lady Acha. On the Toyotomi side were women like Ohatsu, Senhime's own aunt, Lady Aiba, and Okurakyo no Tsubone. The peace agreement looked like mercy. Hideyori would be allowed to live. The fighting would stop. But buried in the terms was a death sentence for the castle itself. Osaka's outer defences would be dismantled. The outer moat would be filled in. The Toyotomi side agreed, believing they had saved themselves. They had just handed their enemy the keys to their own destruction. By spring 1615, reports reached Edo that the Toyotomi were gathering troops again and trying to stop the filling of their moat. The Tokugawa marched south once more. This time, the castle was naked. The summer campaign rolled through battles at Kashi, Domyoji, Yao, and Wakai. It came to a head outside the castle walls at the Battle of Tennoji. Tokugawa forces won. Sanada Yukimura died on the field. The defenders of Osaka were broken. The castle was set ablaze. Smoke rose from the highest tower of the same fortress Senhime had spent 12 years calling home. Somewhere inside that burning structure was Hideyori. Somewhere inside it was Lady Yodo. And somewhere inside it was Senhime herself. She was rescued before the final collapse. The exact circumstances are debated, but what she did in the chaos has been remembered for centuries. Hideyori and Lady Yodo retreated to a hidden chamber and took their own lives. Hideyori's young son was captured and executed. The Toyotomi line was being erased. But there was another child. Hideyori had a daughter by another woman, a girl named Tenjuin. In the burning castle, with Tokugawa soldiers hunting every Toyotomi descendant they could find, Senhime saved her. She would later adopt her. The girl would be sent to the convent of Tokaji in Kamakura, where she would one day rise to become its 20th abbess. Among the ashes of the dynasty that took her husband, Senhime had quietly saved the only piece of him that survived. Senhime was now 18 years old, a widow, a survivor of one of the most violent endings in Japanese history. Her grandfather did what shogunal grandfathers did. He arranged another marriage. In 1616, she was married to Honda Tadatoki, grandson of the famous warrior Honda Tadakatsu. She eventually moved to Himeji, the great white castle in western Japan. The years that followed are often remembered as the peaceful chapter of her life. But peace, for Senhime, was relative. She had 2 children with Honda Tadatoki, a daughter, Katsuhime, a son, Kochio. Then the losses began again. Kochio died at the age of 3, and in 1626, her husband Tadatoki died of tuberculosis. There is also a famous legend that on the road to Himeji, a daimyo named Sakazaki Naomori plotted to abduct her before the wedding. The story is dramatic, but many historians describe it as a legend that grew around a tragic princess. What is certain is that Senhime walked away from Himeji not as a wife. Again, she was a widow. And again, she had to decide what to do with the rest of her life. Her next choice was the path many noble women of her time took after great loss. She cut her hair short and became a Buddhist nun. She took the religious name Tenjuin. She moved back to Edo, the city her family had built into the new capital of Japan. There she lived quietly for decades, but she was not finished with the Tokugawa house. When the noblewoman known as Oman no Kata, also called A-coin, passed away, Tenjuin became the adoptive mother of the future fourth shogun, Tokugawa Ieyatsuna. Senhime died on the 11th of March, 1666, at 68 years old. She had lived through the fall of the Toyotomi, the rise of the Tokugawa peace, and 4 generations of her own family. In Himeji, a small tower called the Dressing Tower, Kesho Yagura, still stands, said to have once belonged to her chambers. In Japanese dramas and novels, Senhime appears again and again, sometimes as a tragic bride, sometimes as a scandalous beauty. But the real Senhime was something quieter and something harder. She was the princess